Now, without further ado, we head forward towards the next session, which is again on experience sharing over investing in Nepal, wherein you can already see our distinguished speakers, experts, and leaders in the business field already seated, set to speak their say about their experiences, very long running and wide and deep, I should say, experience in investing in Nepal, and who have closely experienced, seen, and performed in the economic scene or the business front in Nepal. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the speakers or the presentators for this session representing the foreign investors are Mr. Suesh Chauhan, MD from Unilever Nepal, Mr. Puneet Varshney, MD, Bottlers Nepal, Coca-Cola. From representing the Nepali investors, we have Mr. Suraj Vaidya, the President of SAARC Chamber of Commerce and Industries, Mr. Padma Jyoti, President, Jyoti Group of Companies, Ms. Bhavani Rana, Senior Vice President of FNCCI, who will be joining us shortly, and Mr. Haribhakta Sharma, President, the Confederation of Nepali Industries. And representing the NRNs, the non-resident Nepalese, is Dr. Upendra Mahato, former President, Non-Resident Nepalese Association. And ladies and gentlemen, allow me a moment to introduce the chair of this session, Dr. Shankar Prasad Sharma, former Vice Chair, National Planning Commission. Dr. Shankar Prasad Sharma, former Ambassador of Nepal to the United Nations, holds a PhD in economics from the University of Hawaii. He was the Vice Chairman of the National Planning Commission from 2002 to 2006. Before joining National Planning Commission as a member in 1997, he worked as a senior economic advisor in the Ministry of Finance, a senior economist in the Institute of Southeast Asian Studies, Singapore, and a fellow at the East-West Center, Hawaii. He also served as a professor of economics at the Center of Economic Development and Administration, Tribhuvan University, and at present, he is working as the team leader in the Economic Policy Incubator Project, jointly sponsored by the Ministry of Finance and DFID. We are indeed very much pleased to have him here, and thus hand over the floor over to the chairperson. Thank you.
Thank you, Sibani, for a very kind introduction. Distinguished delegates, excellencies, and dignitaries. I would like to organize and conduct this session within the next 1.5 hours, very strict, because the reason is that I think there are a number of other programs, and our high-level dignitaries, they have a number of appointments with the Prime Minister and other ministers in Nepal. So rather than introducing and speaking the biodata and CVs of the panelists, because it's all here, then I would like to introduce just by one sentence to all these panelists. As for example, Ms. Bhavani Rana, she is the Senior Vice President of FNCCI. This is a leading business organization of Nepal and would be President of FNCCI Nepal. She is a role business model in Nepal. So, Bhavani Rana. Another speaker and the panelist is Mr. Haribhakta Sharma. He is the President of Confederation of Nepalese Industries. He is really a real business leader. I think he has demonstrated in his tenure doing number of international summits in Nepal and inviting number of investors in the country, Mr. Haribhakta Sharma. We have also with us Padma Jyoti. I think he has been a very successful business leader, and he's a very prominent person in Nepal and prominent business leader. He's also the chairperson of hydropower companies, including number of other business and investment forums. I think he has also served, helped the government, supported the government in his different capacities. Mr. Punit Vasni. He's one of the examples of the best managing directors. I think he has worked in number of regional and international organizations. We are honored to have him today in our panel. Mr. Surya Suyas. Mr. Suyas, yeah, Mr. Suraj Baidya first, I guess. So that's what I got. Mr. Suraj Baidya is the regional, not only the Nepalese business leader, he is the regional business leader and very successful person in Nepal. Mr. Suyas Chauhan, he's also one of the very prominent managers in the business field, and then he has also the experience in the region as well as beyond the region. Mr. Upendra Mahato, most of the Nepalese know him very well. He is the founding president of the NRN Association and is a prominent investor in Nepal. I think we have a three group of people. One is prominent Nepali businessmen who have expanded their business all over the places. And then we also have international investors, the representatives of the international investors, and also the non-resident Nepalese representative. Because if we see the Southeast Asian countries and China and number of other countries, I think the non-resident people, basically diaspora community, they had played a very prominent role for the development of the country. Before I request the panelists to say something about their business and the hurdles and problems and constraints, I would like to just recap what has been said before lunch. Very briefly, because I don't want to take a long time after all these prominent speakers have already spoken. So while recapping, I think what Dr. Ramsaran Mahat in the morning session said, because in the previous reform program, Nepal did a very rapid and sweeping reform programs in Nepal that created higher growth up to 7%, and then export GDP ratio increased dramatically. Foreign investment in Nepal increased substantially. Revenue GDP also increased up to 20%. That's what we see today. But over the last 1.5 decades, mainly because of three reasons: conflict, infrastructure deficit, and political instability, our economic growth declined to about 4% per annum. I think lots of speakers have said about the social sector development in Nepal, but now the government is trying to do the second phase of reforms. I think our industry minister in the morning, the industry secretary just before the lunch, they highlighted about some of the second phase reforms that Nepal has already done or in the process of doing it. I just want to recap some of the things that they have said. One is, I think the simplification of entry and registration procedures through the Industrial Enterprise Act and Company Act, opportunities for equity investment and establishment of venture capital fund, possibly coming after the Foreign Investment Act is approved by the Parliament, simplification of industrial enterprise, the IEA and EIA requirements, especially to register the industries in Nepal, and strong package of fiscal incentives to the investors. Establishment of several industrial states and special economic zone, because you know land is a problem in Nepal, so that will take care of some of the problems related with the land. Initiation of the international payment gateways and expansion of e-commerce. Development of major infrastructure including hydropower, 3 international and regional airports, and fast track road. And also flexible labor law. I think this law is in the Parliament, and we are hoping that that will be approved very soon from the Parliament. So in addition, I think we have also approved, the government of Nepal has also approved, and the Parliament has approved the new BAFIA law, the Banking and Financial Institutions law. So this will provide enough ground and foundation for the next phase of investment in Nepal. So that's the reason why the government of Nepal is trying to do the investment summit after a long, long period of time. In addition to that, what Dr. Mahat mentioned this morning is that anything that is produced in Nepal, except very few items, that can go duty-free quota-free in India, that can go duty-free, quota-free in European countries. And the United States has also provided 4,800 items under GSP. And very recently, they have provided preferential treatment to 66 extra products that's produced in Nepal and could be exported to the United States. So given all these second phase of reforms and the preferential treatment that we are getting in number of these countries, now I would like to go to the panelists. And I don't want to ask these people to give the statement, but I would like to ask these people some questions so that you'll know the experience from international investors, the local investors, the NRN representatives, what they think about Nepal, what they think in terms of the reforms that we still need to do in the country. So first of all, I'd like to, I think we always say ladies first. We'd like to invite our Senior Vice President, Ms. Bhavani Rana from FNCCI. My question to you, Ms. Rana, is the government has done so many reform works and they are on the way to do more reforms within the next 3 to 4 months. To what extent you have been participating and to what extent you have been participating effectively in these activities with the government?
Mr. Chairperson, distinguished speakers, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. FNCCI, being an umbrella organization of the private sector of Nepal, has always been active in policy reform of Nepal, especially the first generation policy in 1990. FNCCI has played a very crucial role on creating the industrialization in Nepal also, especially like Industrial Enterprises Act, Custom Act, custom reform, taxation system and all. So FNCCI had played a very crucial role in that time. So these reforms actually contributed to the growth also. The economic growth accelerated almost like more than 10% at that time. And not only in industrialization, but we also play an active and instrumental role in strengthening bilateral economic relation, especially with India and other countries. It was a joint initiative of the private sector of FNCCI in Nepal and CII in India, which led to the historic trade treaty with India, allowing goods manufacturers in Nepal duty-free access to the Indian market, and our leaders at that time played a very crucial role in that. So when we talk about the recent policies reform, especially the second generation policy reform, like Industrial Enterprises Act, FNCCI played a very active role in the drafting process also. So it's been almost 2 months it's been promulgated, and we are working on implementation part also, especially Foreign Investment Act, which like FNCCI is very active working with the government in that. So making a very conducive business environment so we could get the foreign investment. Company Act, Labor Act also, we are working very closely with the government and even with the labor union. And it is almost in the committee right now. So most probably within a month, this act will also will be announced. Like Trade Policy Act, also we are actively involved, especially giving pragmatic suggestions and showing the clear picture of the policy implementation to the government. And a few years back, like FNCCI also organized Nepal Economic Summit also, Business Conclave also, and we came up with a declaration of the reform, especially concerning in three sectors. One is agro sector, tourism sector, and energy sector. And we are also glad that government took our suggestion in the recent policy reform initiative. FNCCI also represent in the different government policy reform bodies also. So we are focusing on one window system also. And like it's our initiative, FNCCI and the private sector of Nepal, that investment should go into through one window system. And we initiated to establish, in fact, Nepal Investment Board also. So it makes the investment much more easier. Thank you.
Thank you. I think I also would like to congratulate the government of Nepal, taking into consideration all the stakeholders and business community while developing the policies and regulations and acts. My second question to you is the government of Nepal is trying to be the developing countries, middle-level developing countries by the year 2030. Do you have any plan from the private sector as the leader of the business communities? Do you think that the private sector is prepared for that, for the investment in the country over the next 10, 15 years
yes,
to reach that goal?
Thank you. Actually, even the private sector is gearing up for this. And then we also agree with the target of graduating least development country over the last few years. And we have made some kind of progress despite of a lot of challenges also. And the main factor which can accelerate growth is investment. So we are glad that the country is gearing up for the investment, and I think this summit is one of the major initiative from the government also and from the private sector also. So I think like most important thing what I just mentioned in my earlier answer that private sector, especially FNCCI, has identified 3 sectors. One is tourism, agro, and energy sector, and also infrastructure. So we are concentrating to work on this sector, trying to bring investment also, and like human capital also. Because like this is our biggest challenge to keep our youth back to our country. So more industry means more employment. So we are working to bring the investment also. So along with the investment, we get the new technology also, and then we can give the employment, and we can have the human capital also. Another sector is, of course, policy reform sector. We are working very closely with the government, especially taxation system, incentives also, to increase the business and the industry. Another sector is banking sector, which we feel that the limitation is, there's a serious limitation, and we can't grow more than 3 to 4%. So maybe working with the foreign agency, developing partners is one of the very important things. So FNCCI is working on that also. Since like now there's a global, we need to compete globally. So going back to our traditional industry, we need to rethink how to add value and all to our production. So we are working on the value addition part also, especially FNCCI has started this project called OBOB and ODOP, one district, one product, and one village, one product. In one village, one product, what we do is we identify the agro product. This is like we want to commercialize the agro sector. So like we identify the agro sector of that area, and then we add value, and then we establish an industry. And the industry is actually jointly done with the government and the private sector. It's in PPD model. And this is there is OBOB in different countries also, like in Bhutan, Japan, Thailand and all. But Nepal is an example that the government has really trusted the private sector. So we work together with the agro ministry in this. So from this program, we feel that we can really commercialize the agro sector also. Another thing is, of course, the investment. We are trying to bring investment from in a different sectors like manufacturing sectors and agro sector, bringing the new technology also. And infrastructure and connectivity is one of the most important thing to meet our goal by 2022. So we want to work in this area also with the government for this. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I think congratulations. You are working on a number of these things to make the Vision 2030 of Nepal a success. I think the last sentence he mentioned about the connectivity and infrastructure. So I would like to pick up the last sentence and then go to my right to ask the question related to the infrastructure development in Nepal and connectivity to our very dynamic leader, who is also the president of Confederation of Nepalese Industries. He very recently, less than a month ago, successfully concluded the Infrastructure Summit. I think today we are doing the Nepal Investment Summit. He was the main organizer for the Infrastructure Summit. So in that context, what are some of the lessons do you think that Infrastructure Summit has provided to us, the investors, as well as to the government of Nepal?
Thank you, Dr. Sharma. There are three areas where I would like to draw the attention of the investors because there are people who wants to invest in this country. So before I actually jump on the infrastructure, for all of you who are here to explore investment opportunities, I would like to tell you that Nepal probably is one of the very strongest country in terms of macroeconomic stability in the system. This had already been explored and explained by some of the political leaderships, those who were present in the morning session, where we can have all the three major party leaders, including the ex-prime ministers, coming here, committing for improved investment climate on the one hand, on the other, the strong macroeconomic stability that proves that Nepal is ready to welcome investment in many sectors. One of that sector probably would be the infrastructure. Infrastructure limitations, as we all know, is one of the strongest bottleneck in our country. Nepal is facing a lot of aspiration from people who work abroad, apart from our own people working inside Nepal. Nepalese economy had not been able to grow for last couple of decades because of the internal conflict and many other reasons. But this is the right time. Ladies and gentlemen, I would encourage you. The right time you are here in Nepal, you have political commitment from political leadership. You have an economy which is very strong in terms of internal consumption and connected to some of the best fast-growing economies in the world, both India and China. And then you have a system where there is opportunity everywhere. Our manufacturing sector contributes only 5.5% in our GDP. That means there is a lot Nepalese industries can contribute in the national GDP. You produce any product that can be consumed in Nepal is a ready market for all of you if you would like to come. And if you have aspirations for export, probably exporting to India and China, apart from many developed markets, is another opportunity provided we have right type of product and technologies. And secondly, my interest would be to share with you on what we did in Infra Summit that we organized on third week of February last month. There are a couple of bottlenecks which needs to be addressed. For example, the investment that needs in infrastructure is huge and the tenure is very long. You cannot repay those funds in a short period of time. So we have suggested that we need some infrastructure development bank and a couple of funds. For example, the climate fund that is now debated globally. That probably Nepal qualifies for taking those type of funds. And then we need to also have infrastructure development fund, a sovereign type of fund, which will be able to give funds for infrastructure related projects in many sectors. Many of the projects are already been explained to all of you in the morning session. And then finally, my submission to all of you would be, if you come to a market like this, where the regulation is still not been in place, we have a lot of new regulations that are about to be promulgated and brought by the parliament. And then the opportunities in infra to industries to service sector is such that I see as an entrepreneur, opportunities everywhere. Look into my left side. Both the companies, they are most successful companies. They do not have a product which is not a market in Nepal. They produce products which are sold in the country. They are most profitable. They are very, very successful enterprises. Most of the track record of any FDI that came in early 1990s is that their market cap had gone very high. Some of the companies are extremely successful. Look into my left. This company's market cap is, when I say this in other parts of the world, they don't believe, but you should believe it. The share prices are more than 20,000 rupees for a share of 100 rupees invested 20 years ago. Look into the type of market cap and look into the type of profitability they have been able to generate. It doesn't mean that they didn't have ability to innovate and bring business ideas. They had strong product range, they have technologies, they have business plan which probably had suited our environment. So my suggestion is for all the people who would like to see Nepal as an investment destination for any FDI, this country had proved to be the most appropriate place. Rate of return on your investment is far better. Even companies like us, where we work locally, our success rate is not bad. Even if our economy grew by 4%, the growth of my company is not less than 20% each year, compounded. If you look into my CAGR for last 10 years, where the political condition was one of the worst, the CAGR is not less than 15%. Had it been a good environment, we could have grown by 100%. So opportunities are quite ambient. And in terms of infrastructure, I encourage you to take the advantage of a recent publication by Investment Board of Nepal. There are many projects which are ready to take off. You can come and invest. For example, tourism to infrastructures in railways, to tunneling, to irrigation, to let's say transmission line of the electricity. There is ample opportunity to invest, and there is ample interest, both from the government and the private sector. If you wish to come and join hands together with industries, enterprises in Nepal, you can come and contact with us in CNI. Would be ready to support you, provide you right type of joint venture partnership. And then you can also look into investing yourself, taking the support of the government, because every policy maker and decision makers are in the same floor. Thank you. I believe I have taken my time.
Thank you, Mr. Sharma. I have a subsequent question on this one, because you have done a couple of infrastructure investment summit in Nepal. With those experiences, can you tell what are some of the things that we need to do, like the government of Nepal has to do, especially in the area of infrastructure?
Okay.
I have seen today in the newspaper that the government has also approved the long-awaited Electricity Regulatory Act. So that is also something landmark, because we have been waiting for that one for the last several years and almost decades. Especially in the area of transportation and public-private partnership, do you have any suggestions to the government?
I think to the government, what we have suggested out of the outcomes of our Infra Summit, there are a couple of regulations that needs to be in place. For example, the PPP law. We need to improve that. We don't have any fund where the investors from Nepal or the enterprises from Nepal can go and access easily. So we have suggested either to have one of the strong institutions as a bank or as an infrastructure development bank in the country. And then the third part is we don't have viability gap funding mechanism in our system today. So we need to do that for any large size infrastructure projects in Nepal. But in spite of not having those regulations in place, the opportunities seems to be far interesting. For example, there had been a couple of big companies who came to Nepal to bid for one of the highways connecting Kathmandu to Tarai. That was, we call it fast track, which is a very short route connecting Kathmandu Valley to the main Tarai land, the plain land where the Indian border is situated. And we have one international airport to be built in a place called Nijgarh. That is one of the most interesting projects, not only connecting to South Asia, but also connecting to Southeast Asia and across Trans-Himalayan connectivity. For example, Nepal used to be 500 years ago the most vibrant trading route for Tibetan trade. And today, probably the time has come that Nepal should look into reviving those opportunities of having Trans-Himalayan trade with countries like China. Across China, you can also go to Mongolia and beyond to European countries. That is what I see as an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Sharma, for your very good answer. And now I would like to go to a prominent businessman in Nepal, an industrialist, and Mr. Padma Jyoti. Mr. Padma Jyoti's entire family is in the business in Nepal. So it's not only his family, I guess. His father was also in the business in Nepal, if I am not mistaken. So I would like to ask him this question. How come? I think your entire family and generation to generation are involved in Nepal and expanding the business in the country. So what are some of the factors that has attracted you and your entire family to Nepal?
Thank you, sir. I think you have asked me a very tough question. In short, he's asking me, you have been here for 4 generations. Why are you still here? You know, I think that's what he is asking. You know. Anyway, so I'll try to tell you why we are still around and I think doing reasonably well. I think in this entire summit program, in the morning we heard our political leaders, politicians. Then in the next session, we heard from our technocrats and our best bureaucrats and technocrats. And then in this session, we are listening to some of our business colleagues who have been investing in Nepal and producing results of goods and services. I think I have read this somewhere that in business matters, the business people know something about everything, you know, people like us. We know a little bit something of everything. And the second group who spoke in the afternoon, the experts and the technocrats, I think they know everything, but everything about something. And then the morning, the politicians, I think they also know everything. But many of my friends tell me probably they know everything, at least in business matters, in nothing. But I will correct myself because after the session, wonderful session we heard from all the political leaders, because they were not talking about right or left, their ideologies, about debating about right or left. I think they were coming together on right or wrong. So they were talking about right policies, right economy, wrong economy. I think that's a very, very healthy and very good sign to see. So I think we can safely say that our politicians know everything about everything now. So that's a very, very one of the reasons we are still around. And I think what does a businessman look for when he starts a venture? I think first of all is the market, I think. First thing, if the market is there, he will come in. Otherwise, everything else is academic. In Nepal, I think we have a very good market, very big market, because our population is it's not so small. It's just compared to India and China, we look small, but it is not small at all. And also in our market, we will find that it's a largely unmet market. It's being fed with products and services of, let's say, not very great quality products from within the country, or not being met at all, or it's being fed by imports, mostly from other countries. But I don't think these products and services really meet the needs and the expectations of the local Nepalese market. So I think if somebody were to smart enough to look at these needs, unmet market, I think he can make a killing here. I think he will be so successful that you will be amazed. But of course, you have to get the right mix and meet the expectations of the Nepalese people. I'm not talking about exports at all, because export is another big story. I think Dr. Mahat said we are already lagging behind in great front. But in exports, of course, sometimes it's not within ourselves. Suraj will tell you about his experience in SAARC region. We have wonderful treaties, but sometimes they are subject to a little bit politics getting in. And now Mr. Trump in place, I don't know if the exports and imports will have the same, let's say, rosy scenario in the coming days, or whether we'll be facing more walls among us. And the second, I think, very good quality of our country is the character of our people. You see, it's an amazing set of people we have living in Nepal. Just take a look at the long armed violent struggle, and then the long transition from this conflict to peace and democratic institutions, and a very bad and rattling earthquake, then an economic blockade. And we are still here. And if you look around, I don't think you'll see a single face angry or upset or depressed. Everybody has a smile on his face. That's amazing, isn't it? So that's the character of our people. And I think when I say our people, our customers, I think is a subset of these people, or another dimension of these people. So you serve a people who are very open to foreigners. We are very open. They can survive any hardship and still be open and, let's say, if it's a good product or good service, they will willingly welcome you with open arms. And also we have seen that we have a lot of resilience. I think number of examples is recently we showed this as President Obama, I think he said, we can. You know? So this we can attitude we showed amply in the load shedding episode. You see, we had load shedding for so many years. We were grappling with this perennial problem. Then I think with committed leadership and a good management team, the load shedding vanished overnight. And who did it? We Nepalese did it within home. So this is amazing, isn't it? And similarly, we had to broaden or widen the streets of Kathmandu. And everybody was thought, the place like Kathmandu, this is impossible. No, it's an impossible task. But we did it. And now I think you see a lot of dust, but that is the second phase. At first phase, the more difficult part was dismantling and destroying the buildings to make the roads wide. And we did it very, very peaceful manner, and all citizens, all consumers accepted this, thinking that this is going to make their future better. And finally, we created our new constitution against tremendous odds. Nobody in this country thought that our political parties will or could ever unite, but I think we did it. So you see, it's an amazing set of qualities which will be reflected in the market and in the consumer behavior. So I think this is a wonderful place, and why I think it's so exciting. It's exciting. It may not be always profitable, but it's very exciting all the time to do business in Nepal.
So good to know your experience, and I'm sure this is the experience of your entire family members who are doing business in Nepal. But I think you have only 1 minute left, so in that 1 minute, I will ask one quick question. Do you have 2 suggestions to the government of Nepal on the basis of your experience to improve the business environment in the country? Only 2.
I think as our president, Ms. Bhawan, the incoming president of FNCCI and the president of CNI have mentioned, many institutions and many regulations are in the making in this country. And also we have a number of, let's say, other factors in the market which are still in making. They are not complete at all. So many of us feel that it is a challenge, it's an obstacle. But I would say this is an opportunity. You know? So for people like our leaders who are sitting here and people like some of us who served in the past in the similar capacities, it gives you an opportunity to shape and make these policies and various institutions and the framework of business investment so that you could make it a little more friendlier than it would have been had it been left to the government. So I think that is an ongoing task, but I think many good reforms and good improvements have been made in the country.
Thank you, Mr. Jyoti, for a very good and concrete answers. I think as I mentioned you before, we have investors from Nepal, we have overseas investors, we have diaspora in the dais. So this is one of the very exciting sessions in the entire Investment Summit 2017. Now I would like to go to our international investor, Mr. Puneet Vasni. He is the managing director of Bottlers Nepal Limited. They are one of the oldest investors in Nepal. So being one of the oldest the investors in Nepal, so what has been your experience over the last few years, especially after the Nepal liberalized its economy in the 1990s? Sir.
Thank you. Good afternoon to everyone. I cannot claim to be 4 generations old in the country, but we've been here for 1.5 or so generations. We've been here for about 40 years now in Nepal. And as you said, we are one of the first multinationals to have invested significantly in the country. If I were to look back and put a ballpark figure, we should have invested close to $100 million in Nepal in the last few years. Almost all of it in capital items. So we have 2 plants. We employ about 800 people right now in the country. So I find it a little strange if people still call us outside investors or overseas investors. Because as you would imagine, we are as much a part of the country as any other industry here. and have been a part of the fabric of Nepal for many, many, many years. Yes, we do have Coca-Cola next to our name, and we are a global brand. We are young compared to what Coca-Cola is around the world. We are a 130-year-old company, so compared to that, 40 years is pretty young. But yes, we are an integral part of the business environment and business community here. The very fact that we have been able to have a business which generates good returns, is a business which thrives in a unique market like Nepal, itself is testimony to the fact that our experience has to be good. Because to a businessman, if you make money, then that probably is the biggest criteria which says how happy you are. At the same time, Nepal is a very, very interesting market and a unique market in many, many ways. In terms of our people here, in terms of our preferences, consumer choices, in terms of the opportunity ahead. While one talks about the economic environment and the regulations of the government and the way of working business, ease of doing business, one often forgets the consumers. And to us, Nepali consumers are actually a very, very different kind of a profile, where we have very interesting dichotomies. We have the young, we have the old. Some of you might be aware, our population is projected to be the youngest in the South Asian region by 2020. So we'll have the youngest population in the world, in the region, and one of the youngest in the world. And therefore, this is for us an extremely exciting market to be in. It has been a stable growth market for us. It has generated returns for us. And what more could you have asked for?
Thank you. Now, I think I have one subsequent question to you. Because being the oldest investor, you have already said that you have invested more than $100 million in Nepal. And then you probably cannot compete with the fourth generation investors, but you have been the part and parcels of Nepalese economy, no doubt about that. But do you have any expansion plan, given the reforms that has been done in Nepal? They are in the pipeline that has been said by the Honorable Minister and the Secretary this morning and the afternoon. But do you have any plan to expand your business in Nepal, given the present situation and second phase of economic reforms in the country?
Absolutely. While specifics of the plans is something which I cannot disclose yet till they are public knowledge, but I would be, of course, willing to share that we are in a high growth stage. Nepal is one of our most important markets in the world right now, and we are watching Nepal internationally very, very closely, and we are growing very well in the country. And we hope to actually build a very, very significant business. Most of the money we make in the country is actually right now getting redeployed back in the country. So we are looking at expanding our current facilities, and we're looking at how best to enter into new categories as well. So our plan for the future is going to be driven tremendously by what investments we can make in the country and how we can look at the next, let's say, 5 to 10 years.
Thank you. Thank you for a very positive answer. Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. Now, I think after listening to our international investor, I would like to come back to our regional leader. As I mentioned you before, Mr. Suraj Vaidya, he is the president of the SAARC Chamber of Commerce. So I would like to ask you one question which is related to SAARC. To what extent Nepal is more favorable compared to other countries in the region? And what are some of the factors do you think is favorable for investment in the country, looking into the perspective of other countries?
Thank you. Probably looking at SAARC, I need to talk as a president first because it would be very unfair for me to just say Nepal. I've traveled to Afghanistan, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Maldives, the whole lot. And all governments that we meet, everybody's talking about creating jobs, bringing in investment. So bringing investment, creating jobs seems to be the agenda for all the leaders in South Asia. Now, that being a reality, Nepal needs to look at where we stand to gain from SAARC. I tend to highly disagree with, at times, media's projecting South Asia as a failed regional grouping, because I think there's much more for us to gain. And smaller countries that are landlocked countries, have tremendous benefit that we can take if we were to negotiate to be able to work on a regional manner. I think for Nepal, really one of the big success would be is to get this motor vehicle agreement through, which would make Nepal not a landlocked country anymore, but a country that has free access, moving its goods and trade, what have you. But really in terms of what Nepal's specific gains, because I think that's very, very important, I think it's the location. Probably South Asia is 1.7 billion people, all of us together. China is 1.3 billion people put together. We're looking at about 35+% of the entire population of this world, all right? Now, look at where Nepal is situated. And look at where the big states of India is. UP, Bihar, West Bengal, some of the largest populated states in India. In China, you have Tibet, which is huge with the potential of 10 to 20 million tourists coming in every year. Now, Nepal lies in a location where we could bridge. This has been talked about several times. And I think Nepal needs to look beyond and really work within SAARC framework to say that the gateway for South Asia to China and China to South Asia will be Nepal. And there's nothing embarrassing on that. We need to be practical. We need to be politically clear that it is in the interest of South Asia and in the interest of India. Because this, and when I say India, China, this would be the largest economies of the world. It is projected by 2030, China, India is going to be the largest economy of the world. What better location does these two countries have, which Nepal has? We need to make a plan. We need to be able to negotiate with South Asian countries and with China to see how we can be the bridge between these two countries.
Thank you, Mr. Baidya. But I would like to follow up on this location issue because you mentioned South Asia has 1.7 billion population, China 1.3. But I would like to give one example in particular. If we start building our second international airport, that is going to be the largest probably in Asia because the land that the government of Nepal is acquiring is so huge. It could be a very big international airport in the entire region. And related to that one is just across the border, you can take a rickshaw and go to India, and then you can meet 500 million people just across the border. So how can we take the benefits out of this international airport as well as 500 million people that you can go by a rickshaw, car, whatever it is, just across the border?
I think probably it's true for Nepal. If we look at it, this airport is going to be critically important because the present airport cannot handle the movement of the people that are coming into Nepal itself. Tourism being a major part of our economy, we need to be able to bring people into Nepal. And I think the international airport would be much more favorable if we look at how it would benefit Nepal. But in terms of South Asia, really, we need to be realistic in this approach, is movement of South Asian isn't that easy because we don't have, like in a Euro visa. We still need to get visas, so Nepal being a hub or thinking of being a hub by having this airport is still a way off. So what I would say in terms of Nepal, really, our potential lies in energy. That is where the energy is. Bangladesh needs a lot of energy in coming years. There will be deficit of energy as per what Bangladesh projects itself. Nepal needs to work with the region to be able to get our energy beyond India, Bangladesh, and move forward. So I think energy is really what is critically important, the only factor, I would say, in South Asia that would make an impact in bringing prosperity to the people of Nepal.
Thank you, Mr. Baid, for a very prominent regional perspective. Now, I would like to go back again to our regional and international investor, Mr. Suyas Chauhan. He's on my right. I already mentioned that he's one of the very dynamic managing director of the company. I would like to ask you a particular question that was raised by Mr. Haribhakta Sarma, president of CNI. Looks like you are making lots of profit in Nepal. So why and what are the factors that you are making so much money in the country?
Thank you, Shankarji. Namaste and good afternoon. And this is not fair, you change the question. But it's not about money. We work for a purpose. And the purpose is very clear. It is to earn the love and respect of Nepal by making a real difference to every Nepali. And that's our guiding principle, that's our compass. If we are serving our consumers well, if our customers are happy, in the process, shareholders will also get rewarded. Well said. So that's the philosophy that Lord Lever propagated, and that's what Unilever stands for. And it's been now about more than 100 years old company, but the ethos remains the same. Words can keep on changing. Nowadays we call it Unilever Sustainable Living Plan. It calls out for three things. First is about improving health and nutrition. Second is around reducing environmental impact. And lastly about enhancing livelihoods. And that's what we've been doing in Nepal for last couple of decades. And we are being rewarded for it, and so are our shareholders.
I think a great answer to a great question, I guess. Thank you, thank you. But I would like to have some follow-up question because Nepal market is growing very fast. The reason is that it's not only the per capita income, I think the remittance income, the investment that's coming to Nepal. So in that perspective, I think, so what do you think you have the expansion plan, like, as I said, to our Botless Nepal. So do you have any concrete plans to expand business or diversify your products in the country, and then probably look into some of the export market?
Sure, so I'll take it point by point. Yes, we are very bullish on Nepal, and we have aggressive growth plans. In light of it, we'll be doing our sourcing properly, and encouraging local manufacturing is one of the key things that we'll be trying and doing. So we have been working with Nepalese entrepreneurs, setting up third-party units, providing them expertise, working with a lot of women entrepreneurs, especially in the rural areas, to build their capabilities. And all of this put together, there are two projects that we are driving really hard. First is Swasth Nepal, second is Saksham Nepal. So as part of Saksham Nepal, we'll work with the local people, we'll encourage local manufacturing, and with the new good policies like SEZ coming up, once they fructify, then I think we'll be competitive enough on our own as a Nepalese company to also export to other countries.
I think he mentioned about special economic zone and his expansion plan. By the way, I think the international investors can take benefit of the special economic zone announced by the government. I think there was the presentation. The feasibility studies of 8 special economic zone has been completed, and there are about 6 in the pipeline. And not only that, I think the huge land area has been reserved by the government of Nepal in 7 provinces of the country for the industrial development and manufacturing development in the country. The reason is that land is definitely precious, and it's shrinking because of population growth and number of things. Thank you, Mr. Chauhan, for your very smart answer. Thank you so much.
Sharmaji.
Now I would like to go to a special segment of this panel discussion. The reason I am saying special section or a special segment, if we see the whole of Southeast Asian countries, if we see China, if we see number of other countries in the developing world and the emerging countries, the role of diaspora has been very, very prominent. I think these are the people who know the country. These are the people who have relatives in the country. These are the people who were born and raised to a large extent in that country. And their contribution to the investment has been very, very instrumental and very prominent in attract the investment from other foreign investors also. So in that context, our NRN leader and the founder president of Non-Resident Nepali Association in Nepal, I would like to ask you one question. I think, how do you see, how do the entire non-resident Nepali community see Nepal as one of the investment destinations?
First of all, I want to say that not a single country in the world has been developed without the very big investment of the local. So first of all, I would like to request to all our Nepalese friends, please be initiative, be aggressive to make the investment in Nepal. If you will be waiting for the good environment for the investment, you will be late, because many people are waiting for in queue to make the investment. Second, I want to request, especially for foreign investors, because to develop any country, you should make the investment in Nepal. So when you have some challenges, some problems, some difficulties, please talk about that also, but not only talk about that only. You have huge other benefits. So try to talk in international forum about those, so other investors will be more interested to come to Nepal. For NRN friends, Today, Nepal needs your help. Nepal needs investment. You know very well your country. You know very well your friends where you are working. So you might be the bridge between them. If you will make your investment, your foreign partners and local partners sure will make the investment. So I always request to all NRN friends, first make your individual investment. After that, try to make collective investment from your Nepali friends. After that, you try to invite all your foreign partners who are abroad. I can say just one thing, that when I have started make the investment in Nepal, many foreign partners, friends, they were thinking that I am little bit out of out of plan. How you can go to Nepal, make the investment. But today, all who didn't recommend me to make the investment in Nepal, they are regretting today. So I like to again ask to our NRN friends who are here, who are not here, please come to Nepal for the investment.
I think with that appeal, I think I also would like to ask you one follow-up question, because appealing to NRN is good, but that's not enough. To what extent you have invested in Nepal, and what did you see some of the benefits of the country?
First of all, human resource. Nepalese are very honest, very hardworking, and very good learner. They respect to foreign guests. Second, in Nepal, all sectors, you should not expend your much time to select the sector. Any sector is in virgin position. You can put investment in any sector, it will work. And the third, very low investment and very high return. I have very big experience making the investment in different countries, from the very developed to very undeveloped countries. Only I can say and assure you that Nepal is the best place to make the investment. You will never regret.
Thank you, Mr. Upendra Mahatoji. I think we have heard very prominent 7 investors in Nepal. I think they have given very positive messages to the investors. Not only that, they have also given some suggestions and comments about the government policies and their involvement in policy-making process in the country. And then we have heard from the highest level leaders from 3 major parties in Nepal about their opinion and their party's opinion about the economic development and investment in the country. Nepal really doesn't do any discrimination between foreign investors and Nepali investors. Of course, Nepal doesn't have the capital account convertibility. That's the reason why you have to go to Nepal Rashtra Bank. That's the central bank of Nepal. But otherwise, I think we don't have any discrimination. And then this is the perfect group in the sense that they have all spoken within the time limit, Swiss time. So this is probably the time we would like to request some of our foreign investors to ask if they have any questions, not only to our foreign investors, but also to Nepali investors as well as our diaspora leader. We have about 10 minutes, but anybody who would like to ask the question, please introduce yourself. And we don't want to listen to the comments or other things. We would like to only listen to the questions, and your sentence must end with the question mark. And very short.
Good afternoon, my name is Savannah Vaidya, and I have a question for anybody that would like to answer. But my question would be, do you have any expectations from the youth, and what would it be? Like, what are some of the expectations that you have from the youth of Nepal?
I think
Maybe
I'll pass
Suraj?
on this question to our regional leader, Mr. Suraj Baidya.
That was my daughter, by the way. And I promise you, we didn't have this question talk. But I think what we expect from the youth is the fact that my daughter is back is the biggest thing for me. One of the biggest problems that we have with Nepali people is when they go abroad, they don't come back. And the first thing is to be able to convince our youth that you're desperately required and you are the ones that will make this country. So I think that's a message that we want to give. As far as the potentials are concerned, I think if you look right across, the government have come out with a series of innovative ideas to not only support people who have enough, but really going to the youth that are coming back from Middle East, from Asia, East Asia, coming up with different business packages for them to be innovative, to try and get finance packages for them to start up businesses. So I think from that point of view, this country's future truly lies in the youth. And Savannah, you coming back is a start for me at least. Thank you.
Anybody would like to respond to this question also, or take that?
Let me, shall I? Thank you. In fact, what I see on the youth, especially the young generation of people in Nepal, the beauty of our country is like this. We have about 1/3 of the global freshwater deposits in Nepal. We are third only to Antarctica and Arctic. This is the world where we have the fresh water, but less than 30% of our people drink fresh water. So for you, it is an opportunity to bring that change to the rest of the 70% people who can drink that fresh water. That is an opportunity for young people. And next sets of opportunity I see is about 6 million people work in Middle East. They bring wide business ideas. For example, one of the business farm that produces ostrich meat in Nepal, we never thought ostrich could be farmed in a country like this. They are bringing brilliant ideas. We never thought as an entrepreneur that this could be a business model. So for all young entrepreneurs, let us not see what government can probably provide you, but let us see how we can collaborate together with young generation of people and create opportunities for them to realize their dream of becoming a better citizen, their dream of making Nepal a little better place to live, and their dream of making Nepal a place where they can also have dream for their children. This is what I would like to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Usually used to say that youth is future. I used to say youth is present. Without your active participation, we can't do anything.
There is another question there. Yeah, please.
Again, I'm coming for the question. Thank you very much giving good insight about investment in Nepal. I think government has really initiated good second generation the investment plan. In that, I want to draw one attention or question, since I'm an investment lawyer. So we are just focusing on equity participation of investment. Why we are not looking the investor, the lender who is making 70% of the project financing, the law is not that clear. Can anybody as an investor or industrialist can advise on how you can attract a lender, a banker, international institution who can make a lending of 70% in project financing where we may not have good law. And I also request government to highlight on that area as well. Thank you.
I think there's a session tomorrow on financial institutions and alternate ways of financing projects in Nepal. That could be a wonderful way to learn something. But I think normally what happens is the let's say promoter or the initial investor who comes in first. It's not that the 70% comes first, then they are looking for 30%. Is the 30%, we have to design the project, we have to get it going, and then I think get the 70% on board. So I think in business, that's the way it works. And today, I think we had the presence of the president of one of the largest emerging infrastructure and investment banks, very, very promising bank, which is going to be very important in the world stage. So that is also is an indication that in Nepal, a lot of these lending institutions have, I think, taken interest. My own personal example, in some of our joint venture projects, we have international investors, not only in equity, but also in lending.
Thank you, Mr. Jyoti. Any other questions? Yeah, there is one on the last row, last but one. Please identify yourself.
Namaste, this is Prakash Adhikari, Chairman of Suki Chamber of Commerce. Actually, I appreciate the dynamic lady we're representing from FNCCI, Senior Vice President, and I have a question for her. You are the representing from Ministry Nepal as entrepreneurs, and you are leading the business people over in Nepal. We are living in Middle-Eastern Nepal. We have 30% above poverty lines to 55% above. But the investment, we have a huge investment opportunity there. But what the FNCCI is thinking to make the investment, and what type of role is playing from the side of the FNCCI to attract the investors where in our virgin land of Middle-Eastern Nepal? Thank you.
The question. I've already explained, like when I was questioned by the chairperson, that FNCCI is playing a key role on, especially on policy reform, and we are working very closely with the government. So the recent Enterprise Act, also one of the example, and what is one of the success reform, what we say. And there's other related laws like labor law we are working. So to bring investment, I think the first thing what we need is the policy. Because when we go out, like FNCCI, when we take the delegation, when we when we organize the summit, then the question is always raised, asking that what is the policy for the foreign investment. So we are working on the Foreign Investment Act also, jointly with the Ministry of Industry. So very soon we will be getting the act also. So it has a lot of opportunities, and then we have suggested a lot of business conducive environment policies. So I think now this is the right time for people to come and invest in Nepal. As the other speakers also, they had mentioned, this is the virgin land, and we've already identified 3-4 sectors where we could bring investment. And I feel that FNCCI is always there to guide them and to support them with the work with the government also. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I think I see a couple of hands. I think I'll give ladies first.
Hello, this is Jacqueline Mangrut from Canada. I have a question related to energy in Nepal. As you say, somebody already say, water is one of the great sources of energy in Nepal, but it's amazing. You cannot imagine around the world how you are strong, and you only produce 2 terawatt-hour per year, which is very, very, very few. You import 40% of your energy with the highest price in the world. So I would like to know why you import 40% of the energy, and you are one of the highest potential producer for hydro energy.
Thank you. I think because we just completed very successfully the infrastructure summit, I would like to request Mr. Haribhakta Sarma, President of CNI, if you can answer this question.
I will try. There are 3 reasons why Nepal had not been able to harness hydropower electricity. Number one, initial phase in the early 70s and 80s, we had very limited industries in the country. Nepal had passed through a very long political transition of what type of political system Nepal should have. We had been fighting for almost 5 to 6 decades. And then came an era where the industries came into Nepal and they tried to produce goods and commodities through the utilization of electricity power. And then we realized Nepal produces the least electricity in the region. Our per capita consumption of power is one of the lowest, forget about the global context, in the region, as I said. And third is our production cost of 1 megawatt power in hydropower is unparallelly high compared to our regional players. For example, in India, if it can be produced in $10,000, then our cost would be about $15,000. That is the type of cost difference. About 50% higher used to be the cost of production. And Nepal itself is a very high cost economy in the world. Our transportation cost is high, our handling cost is high, our roadways and infrastructure conditions are very poor. But lately, I'll tell you very interesting things are happening. The private sector is investing money on hydropower. We have developed models in Nepal which never ever had been thought in other parts of the world, engaging local people, bringing international investors, bringing local investors together, and also giving shares to the people who have money on those pension funds. So we have different models being utilized in last 10 years' time. So I believe that in next 10 years' time, by probably 2026, Nepal will have energy surplus to export to other regional markets. And our cost of electricity that we pay today, it is not world's highest, but it is highest in South Asia. We have seen many high-cost economies where the power price is very high. I don't want to compare with Canada and US, where the energy power cost is very low. And third part, I would say, is we never had thought in the past that how to harness from where to bring the resources. Now I can see many government officials, we need $1 billion for a project of, let's say, about roughly 1,000 megawatt electricity project if our cost is very economical. But we never had considered from where we'll bring that $1 billion for that particular project. We had been debating. So now we are seriously opening up. Nepal have realized the potential of hydropower. And then what I would like to stress more here is if you are from the energy sector, this is the time you should come to Nepal and invest in energy.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
I just want to add that in Nepal, production cost is not very high relatively to the other countries of the world. Because in Nepal, we have very high cost production because we are producing medium size, low size, 10 megawatt, 20 megawatt. When we will start to produce 500 megawatt, 10,000 megawatt, the cost will be very low. The problem is because we have two types of the season, rainy season and wet season. So in rainy season we have excess energy, in wet season we have less. Our government has not yet make the solution of the problem, how to manage, balance the wet energy and rainy season energy. When our good neighbor, India will start to buy our energy, the cost of the energy production will become dramatically very, very, very low. That is the problem.
No, I think it will be difficult to listen because we'll have the coffee break immediately after this one. He's a great investor, so I would like to request you to talk to him. Yeah, thank you. Now, only one final question, given the time limit. Maybe I think there are two hands raised. Yeah, please.
Thank you, sir. This is Vasanta Kumar Siri from Sri Lankan delegates member. I have 4 questions. One, that do you allow 100% foreign ownership in investments projects? 2, what kind of investor protection does the law provide? 3, how easy to get the land for large agriculture projects? 4, do you have any reserve businesses only allocated for Nepalese?
I think he had 4 different questions. One is what percentage is allowed for foreign investment? It's 100%. What kind of protection I think has been provided? I think maybe I would like to request our regional investor, Mr. Chauhan, to give the answer.
So whatever is there written in the law, and we have been now operating for last 23 years. Yes, it does take a bit of time to repatriate the dividends back, but it has been seamlessly happening. So there is law, and then there are people who take care of the law, despite of so much tough times that this country has seen over last 2 decades. The law machinery functions, and whatever has been promised, especially by the law, most of it gets delivered.
Thank you. One final question. Yeah, please.
नमस्कार, मैं हिंदी में बोलूँगा। मैं भारत के मध्य प्रदेश क्षेत्र भोपाल से आया हूँ और सागर गेरे फास्ट फूड के नाम से मेरा ब्रांड है। मेरा फूड का प्रोसीजर का वो प्रोग्रामिंग है। नेपाल में हम काम ऑलरेडी कर भी रहे हैं। ये कार्यक्रम नेपाल गवर्नमेंट ने जो रखा उससे हमें बहुत अच्छा लगा। हम भी चाहते थे नेपाल में इन्वेस्टमेंट करें, और मैं नेपाली समाज का ही, नेपाली कल्चर का ही हूँ, और इस तरह के कार्यक्रम होने में गवर्नमेंट का थोड़ा सा सहयोग हो तो सारे लोग इन्वेस्टमेंट करने चाहते हैं। और कमर्स एंड चैम्बर्स दिल्ली के साथी लोग भी आए हुए हैं हमारे, उनके माध्यम से मैं इस बात को रखने चाहूँगा। और मैं तो स्वयं नेपाल में इन्वेस्टमेंट कर भी रहा हूँ और लोगों को प्रेरित भी करूँगा। और गवर्नमेंट का सहयोग भी चाहिए। लाइट और एनर्जी दोनों खाना दोनों विश्व में चाहिए, इसलिए दोनों को नेपाल को केंद्रित करने चाहिए। जय पशुपतिनाथ।
Very good. I think we definitely, I'm sure we have encouraged you to invest in Nepal. We have number of officials from the Ministry of Industry, including from the Department of Industry, who are responsible for registering and giving the approval for the foreign investor. You can come forward, and there is, I see one empty vacant seat. You can start talking with the government people. But in the meantime, what the minister and the secretary this morning and afternoon have said is, if you have any problem, come to us. We'll be happy to resolve your problem. I think so. That kind of access you have today and tomorrow, hopefully. So probably you can talk to these people, and then you are most welcome to come to Nepal. But I have already received some signal from the organizers, because they have some very tight schedule after this session. So I really would like to thank our business leaders, foreign investors, regional leaders, as well as the representative of the entire non-resident Nepali community, the diaspora community, for sharing their experience. I'm sure their suggestions will be taken very seriously by the government of Nepal, and their experience will also be replicated elsewhere in other projects and investment in the country. So with that, I would like to hand over this mic to the organizers. Thank you so much.